Welcome back, guys. If you are watching this on YouTube, you are now in the third episode, and in real life, an hour and a half has passed as we try to actually get the tier list up and working and not giving us random numbers. So it's mostly up. You'll see some weird stuff on here. They won't be here tomorrow when you look at it, hopefully. So if you're looking at this, you'll see some really weird numbers, like all the freezes being really high, and also things like Venture Co. being like 20. Because I don't know what happened to it. Also, some zero score cards that just didn't make it. You know, like the numbers from our system are right and it's being like uploaded, and it just didn't make it for whatever reason. Okay, so we are going to do the card review now. Just know that this is probably not the same tier list you're going to see, but on the bright side, it is centered now. So we did have so much time fixing the other issues that this thing is now actually centered. So what we were saying about how all the numbers are going to be wrong for tomorrow is not going to be true for like 90% of the cards we're saying here, because the centering part is actually over. And so let me first, and we're going to do what? We're starting with neutrals?
We're starting with neutral cards, neutral commons, and neutral rares. Part of the reason we're starting with these cards is because these are the backbone of Arena, right? You will see these cards very often and for every single class.
All right. So these are the best cards. They're not the best cards. They're just the most frequently seen cards. And as you can see, there are still way more 3-drops than there are other things. And we're going to do it by mana, because someone in Twitch has suggested mana, and it was very good. I wanted to go by the best cards first, but that's not going to happen. So what is the lowest mana card in KFT? Oh, actually, before we even get there, I just want to like center people a little on what the new centering system for the tier list. It's not a new centering system. We just recenter it every time. And the new center is at, I mean, the center is always at 100, but the new Chowan Yeti is at a 111. The Yeti didn't change, but we think it got better. And we think it got better because the curve is more important now, and we think it got better because you can buff the board now, and the easiest way to buff the board is to curve stone it. So, like we said before, you're gonna have some trouble curve stoning it on 2, but it's still pretty good if you can do it. And Yeti's like a nice safe middle. Let's see where Raptor is, right? Like, this is how much curve stone matters. Bloodfriend Raptor is now a 101. And River Croc is a 96. So the Yeti's definitely moved up a bit. It was a 106 in the last expansion, the last time we centered the tier list. So curve is getting a little more important. Not too much more important. It's not like Yeti became amazing, but just to give you an idea of how the tier list is. And if you're like trying to compare things to actual minions, that's kind of where the comparison's made.
Yep. All right, so with that, we can finally start card 1 of our card review.
Card 1 of our card review is a 0 mana card. Do you want to start?
0 mana card, we have Snow Flipper Penguin. 0 mana, 1/1 beast, all right? And if you're on YouTube, you might think we have not much to say about it. And if you're on Twitch right now, you know that I have much to say about this card. But gameplay-wise, look, you'll pick this sometimes, right? And it does have a beast tag, which there are quite a few cards with beast synergies, but unspectacular. We've seen this before in Wisp and Murloc Tiny Fin.
Yep. And so it is the same score as a Wisp. Okay. 1 mana cards. Let's start with the 2 opposing cards. One, this is like one of the worst cards in the game. It is Wretched Tiller. It is a 48. Whenever this minion attacks, deal 2 damage to the enemy hero. So it could potentially deal a lot of damage to the enemy hero, like a Leper Gnome. But it's a 1 mana card with 1 health. So it most likely will actually not deal any damage to anybody at all. Like, it will most likely never get to attack.
Right. By the way, what is the score of this card? You should say
48. I said it. I actually started with it. I know it's tired. I know we're starting this at like 11:30.
I didn't hear you at all.
I know. We've known each other too long. You just tune out my voice automatically now.
Huh. Interesting. Okay. Go on. Go on.
So it's a really bad card. If you're thinking of drafting it, don't. Similarly, Dead Scale Knight, you may think, well, if I can't deal damage to my opponent, I will heal whenever I hit something. Also not good. It's a little better because if someone hits it with a minion, you will at least get 1 life, which is better than nothing. And yeah, and so this one's a 52. Still not good. They're just down there with the 1/1s. And below Snow Flipper Penguin, which is a 0 mana 1/1. Do you want to talk about the 1 mana card, though? That's actually a really good card.
Sure. We have Acarus Veteran. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. But what is the score for this card?
The score for this card, for Acarus Veteran, is a 105.
105. And this is a 1 mana 2/1 minion that says Battlecry give a friendly minion +1 attack. This is definitely overstated, right? For 1 mana, you're expecting a 2/1. Although, as we've seen with a lot of other 1 mana minions, you expect more out of it. You expect, Young Priestess. You expect kind of like Selfless Hero, although I guess that's a class card. But with this, you get a slight Abusive Sergeant effect with more of the stats concentrated on the body itself. You're definitely going to find a use for this card because pings are quite good. And then this is sort of a ping in which you also keep a little bit more attack, right? You can also compare it to Elven Archer in a way. So it's definitely going to be useful. And you'll draft it. It'll find its place.
Yeah, like remember back when Abusive Sergeant was a 1 mana 2/1 that gave +2 attack and it was like really good? This is only +1 and it's not as good. You can compare it to Young Priestess, which is at 101 and it gives 1 health each turn at the end of each turn, but it doesn't have the initiative, right? Like Acarus Veteran only gives 1 attack ever, but you get to use it if you have a minion on the board, and so you can use it to make that good trade, guaranteed. So it is better than Young Priestess, even though it can only buff 1 thing. And they're all 1 health, so it's not like they're going to live for long anyway. Like, that's Young Priestess's biggest problem. It always gets, like, pinged away.
Yep. Sounds pretty good. So, should we move on to the 2 mana cards?
Yes. Moving on to the 2 mana cards. You see that our Ascetic Swampoos is at the top of the chart, alive and well, because of the new offering bonus to weapons. It was one of the best 2-drops. It's still one of the best 2-drops. Stubborn Gastropod also up here. You know, one of the best 2-drops. And the first 2-drop we're going to talk about is the only real 2-drop that we have in Ungoro. So we've mentioned before, and I'll point it out again, the 2-dropocalypse that is happening right now. So you'll see a lot of Tuskar Fishermen. It is the only neutral 2-drop in this expansion. So it is the only one that has an offering bonus.
What's the score?
The score is a 109.
All right, yeah. Tuskarr Fisherman, 2 mana, 2/3 with a battle cry. Give a friendly minion spell damage +1. I think this is just a really interesting design choice because spell damage has always been extremely valuable for Blizzard, right? They've valued it quite highly, and I like this because they're saying, well, we're going to give this thing that we value very highly, but you need something else on the board, and you need to already commit sort of that minion plus the mana to play this in order to reap the spell damage. So it's a good card. Like, spell damage is definitely handy, but this is like what you're going to see. This is like a meta defining card because this is the only 2-drop that we really have.
Yeah, Ancient Mage does the same thing, kind of. It does it to 2 targets, but it costs 2 more mana and has only 2 more health. This is like, it's good, right? It's a raptor with an ability. Sorry, it's a croc with an ability. Those are always good.
Yeah.
And another cool 2 mana card that I think people have different opinions on whether this is good or not. And we came out on the side, this is not all that good. It is a 98, and it is the Fallen Sun Cleric. 2 mana, 2/1. Battlecry, give a friendly minion +1/+1. You want to talk about this?
Sure. Fallen Sun Cleric, this is a card in which, if you've been playing Arena for a long time, you know Shattered Sun Cleric, which is 3 mana, 3/2, Battlecry give a friendly minion +1/+1. It's seen its ups and downs, as in it used to be one of like the best cards, and now it's just known as like a pretty good card. One of the reasons that we're kind of down on Fallen Sun Cleric is the 1 health really matters, and the Shattered Sun Cleric kind of its size fits this sort of sweet spot, right? Where it's not too big, in which the +1/+1 buff doesn't matter anymore, but it's not too small as to get pinged. And a lot of the times you also want to see like, well, does the buff kind of fit the turn? And Shattered Sun Cleric, you know, buffing a turn 2 play, you can often dominate their turn 2 play or even their turn 3 play. Fallen Sun Cleric, it's like, well, how often are you playing a 1, first of all, and how often is that going to matter? Because your turn 1 play probably only has 1 health anyways.
Yep. Yeah, Fallen Sun Cleric, not doing so well. I could see, like, depending on how the meta goes, like, if the meta's really buff friendly, I could see it moving up a bit, but it's not going to move up, like, too much. This is one of the ones that's, I think people just have different opinions on it, but
I think so.
Some people think it's, like, one of the better cards, and we just, I don't know. I don't see it. It's still a 1 health minion at the end of the day, right?
Right. And it's kind of, I think it's kind of weird how people are like, wait, it's just the same thing, but -1 mana and -1/-1. That's like fair. It should, but once again, it's about sort of how it fits with your turns, and then
like how often are you gonna have a 1 mana thing to buff, right?
Right.
And it doesn't kill any 3s. And it's not going to match up with all that many 2s in the 2-drop apocalypse. Like, it's just, it's not, it doesn't have a place in this meta, really, unfortunately. But, you know, 98's not bad. It's, like, only a tiny bit below the average card. So, it'll see play.
Right, definitely. Yep. Okay, so next we have Tainted Zealot, right?
Mm-hmm.
Tainted Zealot is a 2-mana 1/1 minion with Divine Shield and also spell damage +1. So we're gonna. This is also something interesting because of Tainted Zealot and Tusker Fisherman. We're going to not only see more spell damage, we're going to see early spell damage, which is something that we're not used to, right? Whenever you see spell damage early on, it was basically only from Shaman. And annoying enough, you know, Shaman early spell damage into Maelstrom Portal, that's like just game winning right there. And, you know, we still have small AoEs from quite a few classes, and now it's available, you know, in very common minions. Now, as for the minion itself, it's not that great. What's the score for it?
It is a 95, which I think what's interesting about this is that a spell damage on a minion with a Divine Shield that keeps it alive for 1 more turn and allows you to play it later actually, like, does work. And the 2-drop is so valuable, like, in general in this meta, or of the 2-drop apocalypse, that this card is actually, like, not worse rated, right? Like, this is basically an Argent Squire.
Yeah, it's really interesting. Like, you look at it and you're like, wow, this should not be good. But 1/1 Divine Shields are really annoying. Like, they're really annoying, especially if they have something that you want to get rid of. And you're never comfortable with spell damage on the board. A lot of opponents are able to capitalize on that. And yeah, this card is just, it doesn't fulfill what you want stat-wise out of a 2-drop, but as a card itself, I think it is going to be, like, okay-ish. And that's what's reflected in the score.
Yeah, it is an okay-ish card. So once again, this ends our 1 and 2-drop analysis, which is the first part, right? So far, this is the first part of the push, which, like we went through before, like probably half the decks aren't even going to be able to play a 1 or 2-drop. On the early turns. So if you get any of these cards, you're kind of at a bonus right now at a tempo game. And of course, a lot of previous cards, old school cards, are very good, and they have They have they're 2-drops and 1-drops. So now what we're heading into, and this whole thing is all neutrals, right? So it affects everything. That's why we're starting here. We're not starting here because it's the most interesting. This is Arena. These are the cards everyone uses, everyone picks, and it's pretty crappy so far, right? Like, you have two of the better cards that we were talking about, Fallen Sun Cleric and especially Atra's Veteran. They're they're buffs. They need a target or they suck. So they're not on curve. The only one truly on curve is Tusks Fisherman. And you're so desperate for a curve, even a Tainted Zealot is like, yeah, it's an Argent Squire for 2 mana, but it'll do. Right?
Yeah.
And the turn you play it on actually matters so much in that there's so few 2-drops to compete with it that the actual Argent Squire is a 94. And this, 1 extra mana for a spell damage, is a 95. I'm going to end. That is the difference in how few 2-drops there are, that you don't even mind playing this onto. It depends on the deck. This is neutral. So, like in various other, like Mage and Paladin, for example, the Argent Squire is going to be significantly higher. Let me see how much higher the Argent Squire is. Like Argent Squire is 98 in Mage, for example. Whereas the Tainted Zealot is going to stay... Well, actually, it may be up a little too for spell damage, but it's going to end up being probably lower. But yeah, that's how different the lack of 2-drops is making things. It's really warping the game and how you think about the early turns.
Yep.
Okay, let's look at turn 3, where the game actually begins. And I want to start with a card that I think was kind of on the difficult side to rate. It is a Vrygul. And this is the new mechanic, which is what I'm going to call Opponent Death Rattle. Is it not a Vrygul? It is a Vrygul, right? You're making a face.
It's good enough. I don't know. It's good enough.
It's like I'm pronouncing it wrong, but I'm pretty sure it's a Vrygul.
Okay. No, it's fine. It's fine. Go on.
The letters put together make it... It's a Vrygul. I don't care I don't care how other people pronounce it. I'm going to pronounce it a Vrygul because that's how the English letters work. Okay. So the Vrygul is a 3-mana 3/1 with a Death Rattle that only triggers if it's on your opponent's turn when it dies. So only if your opponent chooses to kill your Vrygul will you get the 2/2 ghoul. If your opponent doesn't kill it and you're the one that kills with it, then you don't get anything at all. So if you're the one that kills with it, you've basically gotten like a delayed Wolf Rider, right? Mm-hmm. Like a super delayed Wolf Rider. But like the point of a Wolf Rider is to remove a threat on the turn it's played. So a delayed Wolf Rider is fairly useless. On the other hand, if your opponent removes it, you actually get like a decent amount of stats technically, right? You get like a 5/3 for 3. So that's like a pretty crappy stat distribution, but it's better than, you know, like what you normally get. The reason that this is so bad, that this is all the way down here, is because and again, like 65 this is like we're talking like Cold Light Seer, Thrallmark Farseer like levels, is because if your opponent pings it, it can remove it with another minion the other two too. So the only time you're going to get value out of this is when your opponent can already remove the remaining body. So the fact that there is a remaining body is not as much of a punish as it may seem. And you'll see a pattern with these, right? These Death Rattle triggering on opponents' turns, they're not all that great. They're only good if you can do something with it afterwards, like buff it. But again, what are you buffing a 3/1 to do, right? Like, this is like, so, like, if you had like maybe like a 2/4 or something, maybe then we could talk. But a 3/1 is just, it's not getting the job done.
Yep. I agree. But like you said, I think the mechanic itself is very interesting, where Blizzard has introduced this risk analysis, right? Where they say your opponent plays this, and then now it's your turn. You're just like, well, how dangerous is it to just let it live, right? Because if there's a high chance that they will sort of make the trade that you're making right now, you can say, I'll take the risk, and then they don't get a 2/2 ghoul, which if it's in the early turns or even mid turns, a 2/2 ghoul is, it's not nothing. They can certainly use that to good effect. So I like these cards that sort of force these new decisions that you weren't forced to make before. So cool design, just a bad card.
Yep. Okay, and now we have a Happy Ghoul.
Oh.
96, not bad. Happy Ghoul is it costs 0 if your hero is healed this turn. So the question really of how good this card is, because you may want to compare with other things with abilities, which happen at like 80, 85, I think would be like a pretty good score for a pretty normal score for a 3/3. So this actually gains quite a number of points for this ability, and that's because we expect this ability to trigger sometimes actually now. Like, you have lifesteal minions, you have your old healing minions, so this is not even in Priest. In Priest it goes pretty high, I think. Happy Ghoul is a 121 in Priest, because you can always heal yourself. It's kind of insane. But yeah, but it is a 96, just with the assumptions that you'll have like a couple of cards now in every deck that will actually heal your face. So you're not going to tempo it out on turn 2 or 3, but who knows later on, right? Like, if you have an Earthen Ring Farseer, this is extra. If you have a Voodoo Doctor, this is extra. Like, healing is getting to be a thing now. And Mistress of Mixtures is solid too. I totally agree with Shade Richard Belmont in Twitch chat. Like, there's some heal face going on there, and it's enough to make it a synergy, because this isn't a small synergy, right? No. It's not like it's going to trigger every game you play, or in, every other game you play even. But if every third game this triggers, you've gotten a free freaking, like, 3/3 on the board, which is amazing when you're dealing with a tempo-heavy meta. And the worst case scenario, it's still a 3/3, it still gets the job done.
Yep. I think that's a good analysis for Happy Ghoul, and it definitely changes the way you think about the game, right? So it carves out another little bit of space where it didn't exist before. Now you have to think about, well, maybe I don't hit this guy to the face because I don't want them playing Happy Ghouls.
Yep. Shallow Gravedigger is the next card. You want to start with this one?
Sure. I thought we are doing Mindbreaker. Is it not Mindbreaker?
It's Shallow Gravedigger's Mindbreaker next. Are you on neutral?
Yeah, I am on neutral. Are we seeing a different thing?
Are we seeing different things? What's your Mindbreaker at?
94.
Oh, my Mindbreaker's at 107. What's your Yeti at?
What? Are we looking at 106? Wait, what?
Oh no, you should hit refresh. Are you on our, like...
Yeah.
Okay.
Now Yeti is 111.
Okay, so now you have the actual numbers.
Yeah.
So we were having some trouble with the tier list, like, number importing system. There's still some cards you'll see at like 0, or like way too high, or like just things are happening in the upload process.
Things are happening, man.
Okay, so Shallow Gravedigger.
Shallow Gravedigger, it is a 101, correct me if I'm wrong, on the tier score. It's a 3-mana 3/1 with a Death Rattle. Add a random Death Rattle minion to your hand. And once again, 3-mana 3/1s are just bad. The fact that you get to grab a card is good, right? So we see sort of shades of Loot Hoarder here in terms of the 1 health. But random Death Rattles are not good. It's really not good. Death Rattle minions by themselves are already kind of questionable, and you don't even get to discover them. You just get one put into your hand. So yeah, the fact that you draw a card is nice, but that card quality is very questionable.
Yep, I agree. That's why it's only a 101. If you look at like another draw card things, like we really value drawing cards. Like Loot Hoarder's a 126 right now.
Yeah.
Like in this meta where you can put down something on 2 and then not lose card advantage, Like, that's kind of insane. Because one of the issues, and you may have like felt this if you played it on Goro, like especially early on when there was a really big Ungoro bonus, you try to play an aggro deck, and Ungoro had all those Primordial Drakes or whatever, is you just run out of steam in like many games. So having a 2-drop that you can play and not run out of steam is both good for aggro, and it's good for control. Okay, so now Mindbreaker. Do you want to talk about it? Because you wanted to bring it up last time.
Yeah, so Mindbreaker is a 3-mana 2/5 that says hero powers are disabled. It's pretty, look, as a curve card, that the ability probably doesn't matter at all. It probably doesn't do much, and you're just kind of evaluating the 2/5 body, which is fairly sturdy, but it doesn't really help you resolve the board. So a 2/5 is good at staying around on your side, but it's not good at resolving or kind of killing your opponents. And I do like the ability. I think the ability, you know, we're seeing almost a return of like one of my favorite cards, Sabby Sab, right? Saboteur.
Yes, it is. It's very much like a Saboteur.
Yeah, it's very much like a Saboteur. Although this is like, you know, it just permanently disables them. On your side, you can use your hero power and then drop this,
yes,
right?
But then your hero power is disabled afterwards.
Yeah. So I think it's interesting, but the amount of times in which the ability comes into use is not super relevant. And then a lot of the score of this card just comes from its body.
Yep. And for people wondering if it gets adjusted by classes, not right now. That is actually being done by our development team right now, with instructions from me on how to adjust it. So this is one of the more complicated cards. It's not being automatically adjusted by the system for class. So we have some numbers that we sent over to do it by hand, and you know we're running up right against this deadline here before the expansion releases. So that's not actually in yet. Death Speaker. This is I want to talk about this card because I think I am a big part of the reason why this card is so lowly rated, in that I keep trying to push this card down. If you guys remember, in the Lightforge, when we first brought up this card, everyone was like, oh, this is amazing and ridiculous. And Merp's like, this is transformative. And I agree. This totally transforms the game in terms of what a neutral card can do and in terms of what your expectations are, right? Like against all classes. It's not to ruin the next episode, but it is Bone Mare style in terms of what it's doing. And the problem with it, though, is that it's not really that good. It is transformative if you're playing against it, right? You have to keep worrying about it. It is game-changing. But by itself, there are so many use cases in which you have something happening on the board and you can't use this, or you can use it, but it doesn't really do all that much. So it's not like an Argent Protector. It does not give a Divine Shield. You can't like tempo out with it, right? Put a Divine Shield on a minion and force your opponent to spend 2 mana to ping it, or if they don't have a ping, to bump something in it. You actually have to have a minion with initiative on your board, and then your opponent has to have something for it to hit into that it would make sense for it to hit into and like achieve something. So it's much more situational, I think, that people give it credit for, and it's a pretty bad curve card at a 2/4, especially with your 2-drops in the meta. So it's a 115. I mean, it's better than a Yeti, but this is not one of those game-winning cards, right? This is not where, you know, Bone Mare is going to be. This is not where the next card, the best 3-drop, well, not the best 3-drop, Vicious Flesh.
So this is a score I haven't seen before, and I'm very curious about this.
You are curious that this is so high, or you're curious that this is so low?
The next card is so high. That's
so a Hildnir Frost Rider. What do you want to talk about it?
Sure. Okay, so Hildnir and okay, sure. Hildnir Frost Rider is a 3-mana 4/4 that says Battlecry, freeze your other minions. And what is our score?
Our score is a 128. It is above Hired Gun, above Emperor Cobra, above Tar Creeper, Earthenry Farseer, Wasp. Wasp dropped down a bit. It's actually going to go up a bit. Stealth is a little wonky right now. We're fixing it tonight right now. But it's at least above Hired Gun, Emperor Cobra, Tar Creeper. and it is below Vicious Fledgling, but only slightly. Below Stonehill Defender and below Toxic Sewer Ooze, because we were giving a lot of love to weapon hate. Like, we increased weapon hate based on we increased weapon hate in the last, once we realized that there was additional offering odds to weapons, and now we are increasing it again, actually, because they are just that good. And because, like I said, right, the system adjusts for what classes you're facing. There's a lot of paladins. So that may change, right? Like, it may be like a week or two in, and then we realize people are no longer playing paladins as much because paladins didn't get, like, obviously powerful cards the way they did last expansion, and then we'll drop these guys again. But we'll see. Okay.
All right. Yeah. So one of the things that I see, like, about the Frost Rider is like kind of clunkiness in late game situations, right? Or clunkiness like when as the game moves forward and you're just like, I kind of don't want to freeze for you know, just the discount that I see. But it is hard for me to kind of see that applicability weighed with the obvious advantages that this can have.
Yeah, so like I said before, right? Like, one of the one of the points of a 2-drop Apocalypse is that good 3s on curve get a lot of extra value. So this is the definition of a good 3 on curve. You probably won't have a 2-drop to freeze. If you have a 2-drop to freeze, you could probably trade it into your opponent before freezing it, or you could just freeze it and have your opponent trade into it. Or you can attack face and then freeze it, still get your attack in, and then your opponent will probably trade into it anyway, or else it would get eaten by your 4/4. And in the late game, if you're fighting for the board, you can trade your minions in before using this. It's only like a big problem if you are ahead on the board, and then it's unplayable.
Right. Okay. I can definitely see it. This is good. I'm being educated, and everyone who watches this is being educated as well. Very nice.
And we'll see, right? Like, we haven't seen a card like this before, and so, you know, maybe it's not as good as how we're mechanically thinking this interacts with the board.
Maybe. You said there were also changes coming for freeze. Is this part of it?
This is going to be part of it, but this is actually going to go higher then.
Oh my gosh!
Because we're turning the value of freeze down. It's currently doubling. We switched the way we do freeze yesterday, actually, which is the problem, because now it's actually doing both. So freeze value is like effectively, it's not quite getting doubled, but it's pretty insane. Okay. So yeah, so this is a really good card, and we'll revisit it after this, just to make sure that our assumptions are in line with the board. But it's going to stay very high. It's definitely going to be above Death Speaker. I can't see a way that this valuation goes down below Death Speaker, without changing some fundamental things.
Right. Okay. Sounds good.
All right. Do we want to say that's a halfway point of this neutral things? We cover the 1, 2, and 3 curve, and after this, we kind of go into the rest of the game, right? Like, this is your setup. This is how your game starts. It starts with a 1, 2, and 3 if you are insanely lucky. More often, it starts with sometimes a 2 and then a 3, or if you have a coin, probably a 3 and another 3 in this upcoming meta. I would estimate that, like, maybe half the decks will be able to draw a true 2 nearly always, and then the rest of the decks will be able to draw a true 2 like somewhere between 50 and 75% of the time. So 3 drops are where it's at, and Hildnir Frost Rider is going to help that curve a lot. Also, how freeze works is, and I don't know if you know this, but we talked about this before on one of the Life Forges. If you have a minion on the board and you choose not to attack with it and you freeze your minion, by the time it gets back to you on the next, like as soon as you end your turn, basically, it unfreezes.
Yeah. So you can kind of store that attack.
Yeah, right? Exactly. So basically, you could also do something like, oh, my minion, I may have a minion on the board, but it doesn't need its attack this turn, right? I'll just miss like X number of face damage because I don't have a good target to attack. So if you don't have a good target to attack, the freeze is not bad. It just reduces face damage to the opponent. If you have a good target to attack and you're trading, that's fine because then you're freezing nobody. So the only downside is when you have a good target to attack, you're going to eat it and then you're going to freeze your minion. In which case you're really up, you know? Like that's the case when you're up a lot because you've just eaten an opponent's minion.
Yep.
So yeah, you'll still freeze it, but it's not like as bad.
All right. So yeah, I think this is a good preview of the very early turns and also sort of the start of the game. On to the next video.
On to the next video. This is the first half of the rare/common neutrals. And again, if you have been not here for a few expansions, sorry, for like literally 1.5 expansions, you may not know, but a neutral or just any rares and commons in the arena now have the same offering rate. So that's why we're doing them as if they are the same rarity, even though they're not the same rarity. It may be a little confusing if you didn't know that, but now we're going to continue after this. And epics, by the way, have 50% the offering rate of neutrals. So, yeah, we'll do those separately because they're less important and we don't like them as much. Next video. Okay.
Oh my god.
Yeah, you gotta like perk up.
Okay.